What's up, everybody? This is Skylar with Savage Truth 603, and as usual, I'm here with my buddy Harry, but today we have a special guest. His name is Daniel Richard, and Daniel Richard served papers to the governor's representative outside his house to make sure he knows that he's been fired. So I'm going to go ahead and play you the video, and then we're going to talk to Dan, me and Harry, and we're going to tell you all about Article 10 and what we're up to. So without further ado...
How are you?
I'm well, how are you?
So this is outside the governor's house. He has a state police office there all the time.
It's a service. He's been fired. I've got a copy for you.
Okay.
So he doesn't know that you have your own copy for your own entertainment.
Okay.
The AG and he have been conspiring for 2 years to commit voter fraud. They thought they could sweep it under the rug.
Okay.
So now they're all caught with their pants down. So let the process play itself out. The people of the state have exercised their right under Article 10 of the state constitution,
Okay.
which is the right of revolution, and there's a trigger mechanism, and that is once the state government has abolished all effective means of redress,
Sure.
we have the right to say you're fired.
Okay.
So he was served, the AG was served on Monday,
Okay.
and so there's a copy there. He'll get one via mail.
Yep.
And can I get your name if that's okay?
Absolutely. My first name is Eric, E-R-I-K.
E-R-I-K.
Eric, E-R-I-K.
Yep.
Last name is Willett, W-I-L-L-E-T-T.
E-T-T. W-I-L-L-E-T-T.
That's correct.
Number?
1153.
11.
That's my ID number, and my plate number is 110.
110.
Yep.
Bill Gardner, the Secretary of State,
Okay.
believes in everything I just told you.
Okay.
I taught a constitutional law class to his entire staff,
Okay.
and he brought me back last Friday.
Sure.
So I'm not blowing smoke here. I'm a
No, that's
historian, and so what happened is that this corrupt institution of the Good Old Boys Club
Yes, sir.
never expected a little French-Canadian kid to come along and figure out their crimes.
All right.
I used to manage a federal agency. I used to have a top secret security clearance.
Without being rude, may I ask your name, sir?
Yes, my name is Daniel Richard.
Daniel Richard.
Yeah.
All right. Thank
Yeah.
you very much.
Yeah, no, and your brothers were awesome at the AG's office. They were completely professional.
Okay.
I'm doing this because I have a soft spot for law enforcement. I used to train a lot of officers in the police academy.
Okay.
And it insults me that these dishonorable people, I'm a veteran too, so when these scumbags spit on our Constitution
Yep.
and they put you in harm's way unnecessarily, that insults all of us because you are too important.
All right. Well,
God bless you. Merry Christmas.
thank you very much. Merry Christmas.
All right.
Awesome. Okay, so here we go. So, Daniel, first I want to say thank you. This is a noble cause, and Harry and I, we've been talking about Article 10 for quite a while now, and it's nice to see somebody take the bull by the horns and actually take a step in the right direction towards this thing. So, thanks for coming on the show. I'm really excited for this conversation. Why don't we start out with like a little bit of your history?
Sure. Thank you for inviting me, and it's an honor to be here. I'm honored and humbled. So again, thank you. My story begins as a Canadian immigrant. My parents moved here in the 60s. I grew up in Manchester. 1981, I became a New Hampshire citizen. And shortly thereafter, I was only 17. I went in the Air Force, spent 5 years on active duty, got out. Was a military crew chief, and security forces were my two disciplines in the military. And I got out and had a passion for dogs, got involved with training dogs, and turned into a full-time profession working for an international police dog broker. And then I spent my entire adult life training badass dogs to find bad people and bad things, and including training a lot of police officers in a South Florida police dog academy, which included work training dogs at every level from your local town, cities, county, state, including federal agencies, including classified work for Homeland Security, as well as managing a federal agency. I had 10 bomb dogs under my command at U.S. Department of Energy. So that position, that was a great gig, and it was a contract, subcontractor deal. So when it expired, I came back to New Hampshire.
Nice. That's awesome. So you've worked with dogs, and you said that you had some security clearances within the FBI. You worked with the FBI?
I did work with the FBI for one event specifically, and that was the NCAA Final Four. What the FBI does as part of and this is public knowledge, they protect these big high profile events like the Super Bowl and all the big big college events. And so when they have these events, and of course the NCAA Final Four gets moved around the United States, so long in advance, just like all other security protocol, they put a security protocol in place and they recruit all the local agencies. So when I was attached to a federal agency, I had 10 bomb dogs, so they obviously wanted my bomb dogs.
Yeah.
So I was tasked by the federal government to support the FBI in that effort. So I was their supervisor and oversaw the deployment of my 10 teams for that. The rest of the time, because even though the Department of Energy, even though my job there was not frontline national security, it is because of the oil reserves.
Oh, okay.
Strategic, right. So you have to have a background. So went through the process. And so, yeah, that was the requirement to hold the job. But it processed out, and my clearance was secret when I was in the military.
Wow. And are you still training dogs now?
No, I got hurt a little over a year ago. I tore both rotator cuffs, and so I had one surgically repaired, and I'm waiting for surgery on the other one. So
that'll slow you down.
I'm in a stand down right now, so I'm not doing anything other than recovering and keeping myself busy with research and education.
Awesome. So a little backstory, the way that I met Daniel, the way that I found him was I saw him at the Department of Justice, and he was reciting RSAs and explaining where the violations of our Constitution have happened in this state, and he was very calm and polite. He delivered himself like a professional, and it really stuck with me. So I immediately started reaching out to people who posted the video. Hey, I want to get this guy on the show. We got so much to talk about. So let's talk a little bit about the firing of the governor and why this is happening right now.
Yeah, absolutely. What we're dealing with right now is a rogue government. We have a social compact called the state constitution. And unfortunately, they stopped teaching it a long time ago. Yeah. And so what we're given is a gloss over with social studies and a brief explanation of the federal government with no real explanation of your home government, right? Your state government is that which interfaces with you with almost all aspects of your life.
Yep.
There couldn't be a more important document. I always ask people the question, do you realize how many rights you have under the state constitution? Mm-hmm. Numerically, there are 39.
Wow.
Right? So you have a total of 150 articles, 101 in the Part 2 form of government. And so Part 2, the form of government, was created specifically to protect Part 1.
Okay.
The U.S. Bill of Rights was not written as a repository of your rights, quite to the contrary. The state constitutions come first. New Hampshire was the first to declare its independence by writing a constitution on January 5th, 1776, a full 6 months before the Declaration of Independence. It was a temporary document. It wasn't ratified by the people, but it was no different than what we did the other day.
Right.
We just said, hey, we're divorcing ourselves from you in writing. And they didn't go to a court. There was no court. There was no functioning government. So the people got together and declared for themselves by putting in writing a divorce letter. So when your government's collapsed, what else are you supposed to do, right?
Right.
And of course, that's what the Declaration of Independence is. It goes on to be a divorce letter of 13 colonies who had been here for approximately, give or take, 150 years. And it finally had enough of the abuse of the king. And after repeated petitions and remonstrances, it's a beautiful document, the Declaration of Independence, but it is a divorce letter, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
It gives the reason why, and then it lists all the grievances.
Yep. It's well-formatted divorce letter, too.
I think also a lot of people in the state and a lot of people in general throughout the country don't realize that their states have constitutions as well.
Right.
Right.
That they didn't even know about it, because me and Skylar and I attend many rallies, and we usually bring signs that talk about Article 10, and people don't. They ask us, "What is that?" And we're like, "Check your Constitution." They're like, "What do you mean the state constitution?" We're like, New Hampshire has a state constitution, and it gives us Article 10, which is one of the most glorious things in the world, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
And as far as I'm concerned, obviously in my lifetime, I've never seen the government so bloated at the top, so tyrannical, so dictator-like.
It's taken on a life of its own.
And it's terrifying. And if you look at, some of these leaders, whether it's in Washington or whether you're talking about King Sununu himself, these people are getting rich off our backs and we're struggling. He's closing down businesses, but he's not missing any paychecks.
No. It's a nightmare. And you know what it is, gentlemen? It's this. The American people for too long, our founding fathers warned us of this very thing. As a student and a scholar of the state constitution, I can tell you that I found two teaching instruments, one in 1831, 55 years after the Declaration of Independence, and again in 1903. And both of them in the preamble of a reintroduction of the state constitution into our schools give the forward warning that people have stopped paying attention to this most important document.
Wow.
And so apathy is nothing new because people live off the fruits of the land of those who died to preserve those liberties, and they take them for granted.
Right.
And it's gone on until our country has become so bloated, so bankrupt, not only morally, but financially, that we find ourselves at the verge of our destruction now, because we literally are at the verge of our destruction between the national debt never being able to be repaid. And when you saw the insane conduct of the federal representatives committing treason on the people to enslave you with a debt, billions of dollars to foreign countries, borrowed at interest. Mm-hmm. I mean, you couldn't be more obvious to absolutely how out of morally and bankrupt these people are. These are domestic terrorists.
I agree, 100%.
And what they've succeeded in doing is dividing us so hard that standing up against it is near impossible. We can't get 10 people in a room to agree on that the sky is blue.
And the division is what's going to keep us all powerless. And Harry and I, this is something that we harp on a lot. We're not right versus left. And like people who have this misconception that, because I think we can all smell there's civil war in the air, whether it's in 5 years or whether it's in 50 years, there's bad shit coming just because of how divided we are. And what people often think is, oh, it's gonna be us versus the libtards with the dildos and the bongs. No, first of all, there's a lot of people on the left that are very heavily armed, but it's not going to be a right versus left thing. This is going to be a left versus right versus the government versus China versus Iran versus Syria versus Russia. There's going to be so many countries meddling in our business that it's going to be impossible for us to stay connected as Americans.
Well, you hit it on the head when you read Glenn Beck brought this to everyone's attention a few years ago when he exposed unlimited warfare, right? Released by the Chinese generals. Mm-hmm. Look, I'm not the smartest guy in the room, but here's what I know. We got infected by a Chinese virus after they've publicly declared their 1,000 talents protocol, right? Yep. That they will try to destroy us from within. So we get a Chinese virus followed by Chinese mask, followed by UBS Securities Ltd. That happens to be the finance arm of Dominion. Mm-hmm. Then you get what? Moderna. Who's financing Moderna? The Chinese are.
Yep.
Look who the co-founder is, Kenneth Chen.
Yep.
Tell me that's all not part of the protocol. And then the mask. Look, military trained me on how to prepare for and survive chemical, biological, and nuclear attack. And in the event of such, I spent 1 week out of every month when I was attached to NATO forces overseas. And that is, I had to train and operate in a chemical suit, 12 hours a day, 1 week out of every month.
Wow.
Okay, so I know all about biological agents. So when I see these fools running around with masks, thinking, look, you might as be wearing a chain link fence.
Yep.
You're not going to, all that they're doing, and here's the really nefarious part of what they're doing. Turning that mask into a prime condition to get bacterial pneumonia.
Yep.
When you're recycling that carbon monoxide and recycling all that moisture that your body is not designed to retain that stuff, right? Mm-hmm. You're weakening your immune system because you're depriving the body of the natural oxygen that's required so the immune system will work, making all those mask wearers much more receptive to getting infected
Yep.
because, again, the mask isn't going to stop the virus. Here's the other common sense. We live on this beautiful planet called Earth, and it's a large ecosystem. No one gets out of here alive,
That's right.
right?
That's right.
No one gets out alive. So what does that mean? That means that everyone at some point in time is going to be exposed to the virus. There's nothing that you can do except for get your immune system ready. That's it.
Yep.
1% of the population, unfortunately, may not survive. And look, we have other options, but we shouldn't kill the other 99% because what they're doing is they're exposing themselves for their real agenda.
Yep.
These are those Chinese communist bastards that are here acting as surrogates. These people are domestic terrorists who have combined with foreign actors, and I suspect it's about to all come out in the next few weeks.
I agree with you 100%. And as a matter of fact, I just heard, and I have yet to confirm this, but I just heard that through Sununu's business that he has with Dean Kamen, they struck some sort of multi-million-dollar PPE deal with China. So,
Yeah, that's not surprising.
So, of course, you know, and they all are. If you look at the way that they're making money off these deals, I mean, AG Barr, the reason Trump fired him is because he was making millions off big tech and Dominion. This is the guy who told us that there was no voter fraud through these Dominion voting machines. Of course he said that. He owns part of the fucking company.
Right.
It's madness. So, all right, let's not get off the rails too far here, but I want to talk about a little bit more about our state constitution and which rights specifically we violated or have been violated, and which ones we're using to push forward with Article 10.
Yeah, let's start at the beginning. The state constitution is a protection contract. All right. Most people don't know that. It's a social compact. It's also a protection contract. Let me prove it to you by starting with Article 12 that says the following. Every member of the community has a right to be protected by it. What is it? It is the state constitution. Okay? In the enjoyment of his life, liberty, and property. Here's the quid. So that's this is a quid pro quo.
Yep.
He's therefore bound to contribute his share in the expense of such protection. There's that word again, protection.
Protection.
And you're paying for it. That means you have rights because this is you have a right to enforce your contract, don't you?
Right.
Because you're the creator of the contract. So you're creating public servants. So to continue, and to yield his personal service when necessary. What's that mean? To yield his personal service when necessary is 3 specific elements. 1, militia duty when you're called. 2, and more importantly, the common law grand jury.
Yep.
See, the common law grand jury required that the common law would determine whether something was lawful or not.
Okay.
Not men in black robes.
Right.
Because remember, the common law grand jury in either criminal or civil appears in the Bill of Rights. It doesn't appear in any branch of government.
Interesting.
Okay, that's critical. Matter of fact, if you bear with me for 1 second, I got something here that I want to quote from. Hang on. I'm going to quote Antonin Scalia. 1992, writing for the majority, confirmed that the American grand jury is neither part of the judicial, executive, or legislative branches of government, but instead belongs to the people. It is in effect the 4th branch of government. No one told you that, huh?
Nope.
But instead it belongs to the people. It is in effect the 4th branch of government, governed by and administered directly by and on behalf of the American people, with its authority emanating from the Bill of Rights. Because the grand jury is an institution separate from the courts, and those courts do not preside over the functioning of a grand jury, we think it clear, in general at least, that no such supervisory judicial authority exists. There you go. Thus, citizens have an unbridled right to impanel their own grand juries and to present true bills of indictment to a court, which is required to commence a criminal proceedings.
Right.
So, the reason I took the time to explain it to you is that this is all going to tie to the right of revolution. In other words, what are you being denied of? Because the right of revolution can only be exercised when all effective means of redress. This redress was exactly what I brought to Chris Sununu's attention 3 years ago in his office when I went with my state rep and 5 other men, co-authors to a report which exposed how the courts were changed and how it caused a constitutional crisis because the voters were deceived.
Yep.
So voting fraud's been going on a long time in the state.
I've been saying it for years, man.
So I was pointing out the origins of it, and so he refused to answer. So the next thing that happens is I file a lawsuit against him on July 3rd, 2018, where I expose how there is no provision in the state constitution that grants U.S. citizens who are resident aliens any right to vote.
Right.
Only state citizens who have established themselves either by being born here or naturalized to the state by swearing an oath.
That's when you file a remonstrance, right?
That's what I filed. The remonstrance was the same subject matter as the lawsuit.
Okay.
Well, the problem for Gordon MacDonald is he intervened.
Well, he's a traitor.
Sununu refused to answer. He's got his own lawyer in his office. Why didn't he answer the lawsuit?
Right.
The answer is simple. What does any good lawyer tell his client that's guilty?
Shut up.
Shut up and stop talking.
Yep.
Right.
So that's
I
why
was
they
going to
didn't
say that he didn't answer it because he's trying to play it down.
Exactly.
Yep.
So now that's a double for Sununu. So now he knows twice, not once, but twice. So what's the next step? The AG, 7 days into default, is dispatched. In other words, Sununu used his office as governor to have a case dismissed against him in his private capacity.
Ooh.
Because the underlying case is evidence that he wasn't operating either. Remember, this is the beauty of when you serve these public tyrants. When you give them public notice, they can't claim ignorance of your claims.
Right. You can't hide
Because
from
then
it.
this is the cumulative damage. So because he went ahead and ignored it the second time, so the AG shows up, uses taxpayer dollars. So here's the problem for McDonald. He's not John Fermella, Sununu's lawyer. Fermella is loyal to the governor, and he doesn't have a duty to uphold the state constitution. The AG does.
Right.
So the AG, in order for the governor to invoke qualified immunity, it requires that the AG read the lawsuit and determine 3 things in order to invoke qualified immunity, which is he has to judge, are the allegations against the public official? In other words, did Sununu know that he was violated, or did he know that he wasn't operating in the scope of his duties? Or did he know and do it anyway?
He knew.
And so now I can prove that he did know. Secondarily, that the behavior was wanton, and third, it was reckless. Therefore, the AG had no authority. Sununu should have hired his own lawyer and let the courts decide.
Right.
But he didn't. It's called official oppression. It's a crime. Okay?
Okay.
And same with the AG's office. They do the same thing. So the next thing that happens is the remonstrance. The remonstrance gets filed with the legislature. And I'm denied the due process and the redress of grievance secured by the state constitution under Article 14 as your due process rights, and Article 15. And then you also have rights under Article 31, where it says that the legislature shall assemble for redress of grievance. Not maybe, not sometime, not when it feels like it, but they denied me that fundamental right. Shurtleff and Soucy, Steve Shurtleff, the president of the Senate, the Speaker of the House, and then the president of the Senate is Donna Soucy. They did the same thing. What they were both doing, see, Sununu filed House Bill 1264, which created a statutory authority for U.S. citizens who are resident aliens. In other words, these college kids.
Yep.
Was granting them the authority to vote in our elections.
Yep.
So much for the Republicans sticking up for a lawful election.
Madness.
Right? So while he's under being sued, he signs it in the law anyway.
He does what he wants.
Right. So the next thing that happens is I file the remonstrance. So Shurtleff and Soucy then denied. The 399 members of the House of Representatives are unaware that our voting laws are unconstitutional because the Democrats are forcing HB 105 and HB 106, which is going to make it the rules, the statutes, even more liberal than what the Republicans want, to make it even easier for out-of-staters to vote. And so in order to get that done, he prevented my state representative, Dick Marple, from presenting the remonstrance on the floor of the House of Representatives, denying all the other members, because now all of the members of the House representing the rest of the state are unaware that what they're all doing is illegal.
Right.
All to push an agenda. Same with Donna Soucy. She deprives the other 23 senators. So she received House Bill 105 and 106 passed by the House, and knowing that what she was doing was illegal, did it anyway.
Wow.
Because she concealed the remonstrance.
Right.
So February 25th of this year, I filed a sworn felony affidavit for the Attorney General to investigate crimes against the Constitution, crimes against state statute, tampering with public records, right? You file a document with any clerk in the land, and you're entitled to due process.
Right.
The people who work there can't conceal the document. These are felonies.
Yep.
That's exactly what they did. And then same with Shurtleff and Soucy, except these were being filed at the Ethics Committee. So, which they wanted to be kept secret. So I've been threatened with criminal action. No, those rules apply to them. They don't apply to me.
Right.
Because I have state constitutional rights. Article 8. You work for me, and you're accountable to the people at all times.
Well, I'm going to pause.
So those are the events.
I'm going to pause you for 1 second right there and tell you because I've gotten some privileged information about some of the rallies that are going on at his house.
Yeah.
And of course, you know, he's got his panties in a bunch because people are picketing outside his house. So he proposed a law to make it a crime to picket in residential neighborhoods, and instructed the state police. Of course, this hasn't gone through any sort of judicial process whatsoever. Sorry, my Zoom just popped up. And he's already instructed the state police to arrest anybody who pickets outside his house. He's gotten with he's gotten with the AG of New Hampshire, McDonald, and they put judges in place that are going to deny bail. They're going to deny us the right to a speedy trial and basically make us political prisoners and sit in jail and rot.
Right. That's exactly what he's planning. And please have them explain when the legislature assembled to make a law.
Oh, they did. Well, they're having secret meetings. I know that. I've seen a few people that are ambushing their secret meetings at the place in Pembroke.
Right.
Well, what
It's
they're
all
doing,
illegal.
he's using the emergency, the state emergency act to put things in, like the mask mandate and things like that.
A mandate's not a law. That's the thing people don't realize.
Exactly, and that's the issue. So one of my big things is what I feel is they think it's a joke. He's not taking you serious. He's not taking us as citizens of this state serious.
Right.
He's blowing it off and he's laughing about it like what we're doing is just some like weird ploy to I don't sit around and do podcasts. But like it's really a real thing, and people need to get on board with it. What I'd like to bring up is with the things that are going forward as far as him being served and stuff. What's the next step?
Well, the next step. Let me back up a second and address what you were saying about this lawmaking or this wonderful tyranny that he thinks he can just continue to prop along.
Yep.
So this is something I'm sure be near and dear to your heart. Is John Burt sued the Speaker of the House last year for a Second Amendment violation. The Speaker violated the Constitution again, and obviously Steve Shurtleff is a scumbag and a domestic terrorist, and he's been doing this habitually for a while. And look, I don't want to slander the man, and I'm not slandering him. These are now historical facts.
Right.
These are the consequences of his choices, not mine. I have better things to do than waste my time with those public servants who refuse to honor their oath.
Yeah.
And shame on them, because I've sworn that oath three times technically, and it doesn't expire.
It's a full-time job.
So let me tell you what the state Supreme Court said this year, just a few months ago, and tell me it doesn't apply. Ready? The legislature may not, even in the exercise of its absolute internal rulemaking authority, violate constitutional limitations. John Burt versus House of Representatives. Next. Indeed, no branch of state government can lawfully perform any act which violates the state constitution. Boom. Lastly, therefore, any legislative act violating the Constitution or infringing on its provisions must be void because the legislature, when it steps beyond its bounds, acts without authority. That's exactly what those emergency statutes are.
Yep.
We did not give the legislature any ability to give away its power to the executive. And that's what the emergency power statutes is all about. And this is the unanimous decision of the Michigan Supreme Court when it answered the federal question recently, a few months ago, because a group of medical doctors sued Governor Whitmer in Michigan, and they sued her in federal court.
Yep.
So the federal judge asked the lower court or the state court, because of separation of powers, respecting separation of powers and state and federal jurisdiction, sent down 2 certified questions. And a unanimous vote, even though it's a 5-4 Democrat, Republican dominant vote, it was a unanimous vote. It's called Non-Delegation Doctrine. This is a backbone of American jurisprudence. Of the fact that Gordon MacDonald, who was going to sit as the Chief Justice of the state Supreme Court, doesn't know this. He and his staff, Daniel Will specifically, right? Who's Daniel Will? Daniel Will's the Solicitor General. Okay, he wears a second hat, the real domestic terrorist, the New Hampshire Bar Association.
Oh, okay.
Okay? They and their surrogates. So he's the president of the Board of Governors of the New Hampshire Bar Association. I just shared with you the recent opinion of the state Supreme Court. And you mean to tell me no prominent law firm in this state has stood up for the people of New Hampshire?
Right. I've wondered
They
about
should
that.
all be run out of town.
Yep.
Bunch of cowards.
Yep.
They're letting the people of this state, while they have made themselves rich on their predatory practices
Yep. It's all money.
of enacting laws and statutes, enforcing them on the people as if they're law. It's called colorable law when they're not written pursuant to the Constitution. It's been going on too long.
It has. It's been going
And now
on
it's
for a few
cumulative. And here's the big thing. I think this really when people ask me, what are we going to do about this? Remember, so once we get past the 6th, right, with him being served, let me share with you the federal law, because he's getting ready, and anyone that that works with him will violate the Insurrection Act. And let me pull it up right here. Give me a second. The Insurrection Act is derived from the U.S. Constitution under Article 4, Section 4, which says, quote, the United States shall guarantee every state in this union a republican form of government. You guys know what that means?
Kinda.
Enlighten us.
I'm going to cheat and give you a dictionary version of it so
Thank you.
I can quote the source since I'm pulling it up. I know what it is, but I just want to quote. A republic is a form of government which the country is considered a public matter, not a private concern or property of the rulers. Hello?
Yep.
Okay? So, republican form of government, and shall protect each from invasion, and on application of the legislature or the executive, when the legislature cannot be convened against domestic violence. This is what Thomas Jefferson used when he wrote the Insurrection Act. So the Insurrection Act, I'm pulling up the law now, give me a second. Under military, look it up, Armed Forces, Title 10, look it up on any dictionary with this federal law. I like Cornell Law has a great Legal Information Institute. And then general military use under 253, insurrection. Give me a second. Here you go, Chapter 13, 253. Interference with state and federal law. So we have a right called the right of revolution. We've lawfully served them. So if they ignore us, I will argue that they are going to violate federal law, and here it is. the president, by using the militia or armed forces or both, in any other or by any other means, shall take measures as he considers necessary to suppress in a state any insurrection, domestic violence, unlawful combination, or conspiracy. See, we've got a conspiracy here. We can prove it.
Yep.
If it, one, so hinders the execution of the laws of the state and of the United States within the state.
Bingo.
That if any part or class of its people is deprived of a right, we're exercising our right, privilege or immunity, or protection named in the Constitution and secured by law, and here's the hook, and the constituted authorities, that be the current deep state,
Yep.
the constituted authorities of that state are unable, fail, or refuse to protect that right, privilege, or immunity, or to give that protection. There you go.
Right there.
So now this is where the accumulative damage starts to happen. Have you heard of the term called fruit of the poisonous tree?
No.
It's a legal concept, and it refers to when bad law is used, right? And everyone who touches it becomes tainted by it, and they all become liable. Okay? That's the concept. I keep it in layman's terms, right? Fruit of the poisonous tree. So everyone who touches this bad poison, this conspiracy, because in the end, the details are true.
Right.
The details are true. In other words, there's no provision in the state constitution for them to allow U.S. citizens who are resident aliens, in other words, out-of-staters. There's no authority for them to amend the Constitution just before an election over undelegated powers to lock the government down to allow this to be done in secret.
Yep.
This is all treason.
Yes, it is.
So in the end, yes, we're in a difficult spot that the people of this state have never found themselves with a totally rogue government.
One other
where
time-
we're literally on the precipice of being force vaccinated by a criminal.
We did have to remove Wentworth with a cannon on the front lawn.
That's right.
We're not afraid to do it again.
Well, on that note too, it's real important to state this too. Is that what's happening is a lot of different groups are reaching out to me now because they see the momentum and the traction. Because ultimately, this is going to be the will of the people versus the will of the government.
Yep.
Right. There's a lot more of us than there is of them.
That's right.
Sununu's going to have to convince all of his cronies to go along and violate the rights of the people, and we have to convince the people that they have no authority.
Right.
Because in the end, it's what the people are willing to submit to. And
Right.
so this is why knowledge is power, and that's why it's important to stand peacefully
Yep.
and invoke your rights and your authority. And I want to go over Article 10. And ready?
Ready.
Government being instituted for the common benefit, protection, there's that word again, and security of the whole community, and not for the private interest or emolument of any one man, Sununu, family, his or the bar, or class of men, the deep state.
Yep.
Therefore, whenever the ends of government are perverted and public liberty manifestly endangered, aren't we there?
Oh, we are way past there.
And all other means of redress are ineffectual, aren't we there?
We're there.
There's no redress by petition. There's no redress by remonstrance. There's no redress in the courts. There's no redress by election. There's no redress by the grand jury, and there's no redress by an open functioning government. Therefore, if I missed anything, there's no redress.
Right.
And that's exactly what this clause requires. So you can't do this for light and transient purposes, as stated in the Declaration of Independence. We shouldn't just throw off our form of government for willy-nilly purposes.
Right.
So now it's taken this long train of repetitive abuse and refusing to hear the people on any level is where we've gotten to this point. So what does the clause go on to say? It says, after all other means of redress are ineffectual, the people may, and of right ought. Ought is a strong word. It's your duty.
Yep.
You have a duty. So the people have a right ought to reform the old or establish a new government. The doctrine of non-resistance against arbitrary power and oppression is absurd, slavish, and destructive of the good and happiness of mankind. And there's the key. The doctrine of non-resistance against arbitrary power. We simply stop it and grow the numbers and stop complying.
Yep.
And lock them down, lock them in their places.
Right.
Because if this doesn't stop soon, bad things are going to start happening. And I'm not advocating for that.
Right.
I say we stick to being peaceful, peaceful, peaceful. If they choose to attack the people, they incite violence on the people, then look, human nature is predictable. People will finally have enough and bad things and I don't want to go there. Someone who's a soldier who knows what combat. Listen, I've never been on the battlefield. I'm not going to claim that. What I'm going to say is I know enough about it, and I've been exposed to enough support of it on our streets as training cops and police dogs that, look, violence and civil unrest are ugly, bad things. And they're things that nobody who has seen them wants anything to do with.
Right.
And so that's why I'm emphasizing and keeping our language and standing, because what we do is if we're saying that the government is rogue and they're lawless, we can't break the law to prove to them that they're being lawless because we defeat our own standing.
Right.
But are we breaking the law? I mean, at some point, say this is all ignored, and say on the 7th we fail to accomplish him being sworn in and things like that. Say they blow off your notices, and say they just laugh in our faces as citizens.
Right.
And I agree that nobody wants that sort of confrontation, but at some point, is that an option?
Well, I don't want to give an answer to that question because I never want to get there.
Right.
So let me give you my answer looking forward. I think that we still have the peaceful means of going down this process. I just explained to you the federal teeth that's an option. I think Trump is going to invoke the Insurrection Act because if you read the emergency orders he put in place 2 years ago, okay, someone clearly handed him a rule book as to how they would cheat.
Yep.
He knew how they would do it, why they would do it, and who the actors would be. Listen, all they did was attack the man long before he even came down the escalator, right?
Yep.
So they knew that this man can never be president. And so why? Because he wasn't loyal to the deep state like all the other presidents and all the other bad faith actors, regardless of the party.
It's because of his money. He can't be bought out. He doesn't bend to special interests and foreign leaders.
Right. What do I think the trigger mechanisms that are going to cause violence and bloodshed to spill on our streets? We're almost there now because what you've got now is you've got people who can't take it anymore. Mm-hmm. I've heard whispers, and I tell the people I don't want anything to do with it, but I've heard whispers of bad things are being planned. Mm-hmm. And this clown thinks that he's just going to steamroll 1.5 million people and live through it is pretty naive. Look, he's scared. Why do you think he has a state police detail at his house?
I was going to mention that.
Typically, most governors do have a state police detail.
Right.
Shouldn't need one.
No, but typically they do just for, I mean, everybody hates the guy regardless. Right. He's a politician. But what I'm seeing and what I'm feeling and kind of, for me, it's like nobody wants it to get to that point, but it's going to that point.
Right.
And I think everybody's afraid to like the elephant in the room. We're afraid to address like, look, man, this shit's about to hit the fan, and of course we'd all like to be peaceful. I mean, I'm a father. I got 2 daughters. They're young. I don't want my kids to be living in a time where there's that kind of chaos. But I feel like it's inevitable, and I feel like unfortunately it's a reality that we're all going to have to deal with as citizens, and especially people that want to do the right thing for the state and for our families and for our futures. These tyrants, and that's what they are. Unfortunately, they have to fear the fangs more than the pen.
Right.
So let me. I guess I want to expand on Harry's question a little bit more. So January 7th, we show up for the swearing-in ceremony. we do our best to make sure that it doesn't happen. Make a noise, getting in the way, peacefully disrupting this to the best of our ability. Okay?
Right.
Worst
Right.
case scenario, they start arresting people,
Right.
which is against the law.
Well, now hold on. Now they're going to be in a big. Now they're going to have a problem. Now they're going to have a really big problem, and that is they're violating federal law.
Okay?
Right.
Because they no longer have any authority, because they're denying you your right to exercise your right of revolution.
So that's when it
Aren't
becomes
they?
the Insurrection Act, right?
And there comes the Insurrection Act. So what I'm going to do proactively behind the scenes is I've already started with reaching out to some of the sheriffs. A friend of mine who ran for sheriff has reached out to all of them, all 10 of them, and has communicated with good representation with 2 of them up in the North Country.
Good.
And we're going to try to meet with all of them at a high level, because what law enforcement doesn't know is they're taught statute law. They're not taught what the state constitution says, because
Right.
who they work for, they don't work for you and I anymore. They work for the legal society who's created this wonderful fiefdom that profits them.
Yep.
And so the cops are in the middle. They don't want to be in the middle. They just want to do their jobs and go home to their families and live a normal life.
Right.
Listen, what they do is not easy work.
Nope.
And they're an integral part of our culture. That's why I said what I said to that state trooper. I meant it, is that they're too important. So right now, they're unaware. They're following statute law. That's all they keep. And who's telling them this? The lawyers.
Yep.
The lawyers that are telling them who? The men in black robes have their backs. Well, look, that doesn't do them any good. Look, there were 4 cops shot in North Carolina last week.
Yep.
Cops have been under attack. They're being targeted in their cars, their homes, in their precincts, okay? They're not safe anymore either. This needs to stop.
I've been saying for a long time that I think unfortunately it's gonna come down to a choice that police officers are gonna have to make. Do I stand with the government, or do I stand with the people?
Right.
And
that's why setting up knowledge is important.
I think the waters are gonna get real muddy before they get clear. I think that is gonna be what's, to me, I see, if no matter how this thing goes down, as long as police aren't arresting people for things that they can't arrest people for, I don't think you're going to see a whole lot of, violent type stuff. But if they start cuffing and stuffing
See
people,
what happened in Concord today?
no,
Oh yeah, a bunch of moms called me all panicked. They were being run out of the trampoline center, and they were threatened with arrest unless they wore their mask.
by the police.
Yes.
Jesus
Concord
Christ.
PD.
Jesus Christ.
Right. So
But
how long did they think that this is going to continue? This has been going on a year. The amount of damage being inflicted. Yeah.
At some point, police need to say, they can't just say, "Hey, I'm just doing my job."
Right.
Right.
They're going to have to say, this is ridiculous, and we're not going to stand like they swore an oath to
Right.
protect people, not to become government tax collectors and write tickets so they can earn revenue.
Right.
That's not what it's about. And you know what? And like you said, if they're arresting people for doing, listen, if I show up and I punch somebody in the face and I commit a crime, then I deserve to be arrested.
Yep.
If I show up and I'm saying, hey, this isn't right, and they arrest you because you're protesting or because you're, doing what you're doing lawfully, then, they're in the wrong. And it needs to be documented. And you know what? People have had enough. The
Yeah.
citizens have had enough.
Yeah.
So so let's say we disrupt the swearing in. Let's say for some crazy reason Sununu actually accepts this, which I don't think any of us think that he's going to willingly accept it. But let's pretend for a second he does. What's the next step? We have to put a new government in place.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is where my back channel communication with a lot of prominent members of our state government come into play. The first thing to do is elect a committee of safety.
Yep.
The committee of safety is exactly what the founding fathers did when they found themselves with a rogue government and they dismantled their government. So they elected a committee of safety. The assembly was those who assembled to empower their representatives. And so that's how it began. And so I've drafted a short list of the things that we really need to look at doing. We can talk about those at another time, but yeah, that's exactly what needs to happen. And then here, let me pull it up. got too many documents open. Please forgive me.
That's what happens, man. You start digging into these, subjects, and there's so much information out there that you want to try to hang on to. I do the same thing. Sometimes I have 30 tabs open.
I do the same thing.
I would say to you that the in order, public safety is number one. That is the outreach to law enforcement to stabilize everything and keep them employed and keep them doing what they do best, right?
Yep.
And a lot of people don't understand that the sheriffs are the highest,
Law
the
enforcement.
sheriffs are, and they're the way to go.
Yeah, they're the ones that enforce the Constitution. That's their job.
You're right, but unfortunately we do have a major influence with the state police, and so I'm not being closed-minded. Again, this isn't me. These are recommendations. The people have to choose for themselves.
Yep.
All I've done is educate people on what their rights are and let them choose and let them vote on what these choices should be.
Sure.
So public safety, number one, then elect a committee of safety, number two, for the purposes of number three, restoring the constitutional state, no longer operating as a federal franchise, restore the people's grand jury so we can start giving these criminals their due process, which they denied us. So let's give them their due process and enforce the law, and then repeal all previous acts and amendments or addendums that are repugnant or contrary to the New Hampshire Constitution. 6, repeal the bar's charter because it exists by fraud. It violates the monopoly clause. They circumvented the legislature when they took over the judicial branch. Here we have a corporation. The New Hampshire Bar Association runs the judicial branch. Isn't that wonderful?
Yeah.
For their profit, for their interest, for their emolument.
Yep.
Right? So the judicial branch, the Attorney General's office must be elected by and accountable to the people. No more selection by the governor. The judicial branch must be elected under the 14th Amendment in order for New Hampshire to have full federal representation of the state. Right now, if you read Article 14, by not electing our judicial branch, we're not actually meeting the requirements of the U.S. Constitution under the 14th Amendment. That's another conversation.
Really?
Hold a new election by paper ballot.
Yep.
And the state must return the lawful money for common law courts in any contract to be lawful.
Lawful money meaning money that's backed by something other than good faith?
Well, look, let me shock you. This was passed September 1st, 1781, before New Hampshire has actually ratified its new constitution. Ready?
Ready.
An act for making gold and silver tender for all debts and for settling the depreciation of paper money. You already knew why Federal Reserve should never be allowed to exist.
Yep.
Right? And for the further regulation of the courts of justice. Never heard that before, did you?
Nope.
The money and the courts are tied together. That's why our courts operate under the Uniform Commercial Code, because FDR took away the gold. Lyndon Baines Johnson in 1965 took lawful silver out of circulation, which left the state of New Hampshire had to amend its courts, and that's why it did.
Wow.
Because if I agree to paint your house for $1,000 silver and any other consideration, we'd have a common law contract, because both the state and federal constitution call lawful money gold and silver coin, right?
Yep.
Well, if you operate outside of the Constitution with a debt instrument called the Federal Reserve, you're not operating under the Constitution. So if I paint your house for $10,000 Federal Reserve notes and I paint your house the wrong color, you can't take me to a common law court because it's not lawful money. You have to take me to a commercial court, which operates under admiralty jurisdiction, admiralty rules of jurisdiction. Okay. I know it's an oxymoron, but that's what's going on.
Yep.
So that's why this federal franchise is operating. It's all to process and have the banks can have redress of grievance for their commercial paper.
Yep.
Listen, John Langdon, when he went to Philadelphia in the summer of 1787 as one of the delegates to the New Hampshire delegation for the famous Constitutional Convention, he told the delegates upon arriving that if you're going to talk about paper money, we're leaving.
Wow. Wanted nothing to do with it.
The U.S. Constitution says that lawful money is gold and silver coin, and that the federal Congress will regulate the value thereof.
Yep.
It's not an accident.
Dan, did you ever think about going to law school?
Yes, and I've been told that the reason I know what I know is I didn't go to law school because I didn't have a liberal professor telling me how to read all of these historical events to have this depth of knowledge. I was self-taught, which turns out to be a big blessing to me.
You weren't indoctrinated.
Exactly.
Yep.
But I do understand that one affects the other, and you have to understand that this isn't subject to my individual interpretation. One affects the other. For example, Part 1, Form of Government, the Bill of Rights. Part 2 was created to protect Part 1. So everything that is in Part 1 has a sister in Part 2 somewhere, protecting Part 1.
Yep.
And so, again, it's important to understand the synergy and the genius of the Founding Fathers.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
So, do we know what time yet this the ceremony is going to be? I know the time's been up in the air so far.
Yeah, and so is the date. So it expires on the 6th.
Okay, because I've been hearing the 6th and the 7th for the date.
Right. So his oath expires. His last election gave him until the 6th. So his new election, we're told, begins on the 7th, but we have to be prepared to adapt accordingly.
Okay.
And the goal is to make a major emphasis on a peaceful protest.
Yep.
I'm going to recommend that those who want to open carry stay, out of the pavilion per se. They can still attend, but that way it's not. Everyone is allowed to. In other words, I don't want the governor to feel threatened by force of arms.
Yep.
So that moms and their kids and those who want to attend. All walks of life, those who want to stand on one united front. We have a social compact called the state constitution. We've all agreed to live under the instrument. If our public officials refuse to live under our social compact, they can go find something else to do.
Get out.
They're fired.
Yep.
And I think your message is great because we need to unite more. We need to come together as Americans.
Yep.
And enough of this bullshit, man. Like, there's some serious injustices and tyrannical shit going on. Right. And, it's not one side or the other. It's everybody that it's affecting. And the more people that come together to support tearing down this tyranny, the better. That's what America's about.
Well, that's it. The numbers, the strength is not in the action, but the numbers, the call to assemble and actually assembling and then declaring so. If you try to do it as an individual group, you'll ultimately be targeted and removed from society. And, doing it peacefully, you can get the people to join you. Getting others to pick up arms where our culture is too soft.
Yeah, I do agree with that.
What I predict the Civil War will look like will be an insurrection of hit and run.
Yeah.
The people will do the same thing they did to the King of England.
Mm-hmm.
Ambush attacks.
Yep.
And it'll be ugly.
Yep. I agree. All right, well, gentlemen,
it's sad, but I don't want it to get there. That's why I'm exhausting every peaceful remedy. The good Lord is revealed these things to me.
Yep.
And I'm sharing them with everyone who will listen to try to get them to understand what their rights are. Because if you don't know what they are, you don't have any.
Right.
Well, I appreciate, and I know a bunch of us appreciate the work that you're doing.
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah, I want to say thank you so much. I appreciate all the explanation of this stuff. I'm actually probably, as soon as we get done, go back and watch the whole thing again so I can absorb some of it some more. So
no problem.
We're the bottom line is, guys, we need as many people to show up as possible for this thing. If you're in the hospitality industry, if you're in the tattoo industry, if you're in any industry that's been damaged by these lockdowns and all these mandates and all this bullshit,
you're an American.
Be on the State House lawn with us. It's important. This is literally life or death for some people. It's time to stop screwing around.
And it's all inclusive.
And by the
all
way,
inclusive.
Hey, and on that note of all inclusive, I'm going to invite law enforcement at all levels to join me at my assembly.
Okay.
So these public assemblies, probably going to be at a church again.
Okay.
That they're invited to participate because they need to know too. We have nothing to say or do that shouldn't be public knowledge.
Yep.
We're not hiding anything. We're standing on the state constitution and the knowledge and the power it brings to the table.
Yep.
That's right.
So anyone that may see this, please, I beg of you, join us.
Join us.
Find out, join us so that you can sit in on the teaching instruments. There are a lot of prominent people who were at the last assembly. I'll leave their names out, but they are prominent people in our community, including members of the legislature. And so, I mean, that's the way, because it's not just their private, it's just not their public job, but also them in their private capacity, because they have their loved ones and their families, and they should have a say in this too.
Of course.
So where's the best place for people to find more information from you, Dan?
COSNH.com is the website. The Facebook page, which is normally been driving most of the attention, is the opposite. It's New Hampshire COS.
Okay.
Just New Hampshire COS.
Okay.
Don't fret if you enter that as a domain search and get the Chinese version, because when our web designer purchased COS New Hampshire, she tried to get NHCOS and couldn't get it. For whatever Chinese purposes, it had nothing to do with us being hacked or infiltrated.
Okay. Good to know. Good to know. Well, I thank you very much again, Dan. This has been awesome, and I look forward to doing another video again soon.
Awesome. God bless you guys. Thank you. Keep up the good fight. See you soon.
This is Skylar with Savage Truth 603. I'm here with my boy Harry Bennett and Dan Richard, and we just had a kick-ass conversation about Article 10 and what it means to you. So if you haven't watched the whole thing, watch it again.
Oh, yeah.
Peace.